Join our family of creators. Your support means the world to us. Subscribe now to the Content Creator channel. Your support keeps us motivated and helps us bring you fresh, exciting content every week. Hit that subscribe button and be part of our journey. The world is on high alert. Breaking news flashes across every screen. American bombers have struck Iranian nuclear facilities, sending shockwaves through global capitals. Tensions are escalating rapidly. U.S. military forces mobilize across the Middle East, while world leaders scramble to respond to the unfolding crisis. The region stands on the brink. The fate of millions hangs in the balance as the world braces for what comes next. The current high alert follows a calculated U.S. military buildup. Operation Rough Rider, launched in spring 2025, saw targeted airstrikes against Houthi forces in Yemen, an unmistakable warning to Iran. By mid-June, 40,000 U.S. troops and 2 carrier strike groups were spread across allied nations, backed by advanced jets and missile defenses. The deployment was designed for rapid response and overwhelming deterrence. Every asset moved into place was part of a larger strategy, to force Iran to reconsider any aggressive moves. The Trump administration made clear it was ready to escalate if its warnings were ignored. This was coercive diplomacy at its most visible. Tensions exploded on June 13 and 14, as Israel launched major airstrikes on Iranian nuclear and military sites. Iran responded within hours, firing missiles and drones directly at Israeli territory, causing civilian casualties and escalating the crisis. For the first time, the conflict moved beyond proxies to direct state-on-state attacks. The U.S., as Israel's closest ally, was pulled deeper into the crisis, raising the alert level for American forces. Hopes for diplomacy vanished as violence spiraled, each side compelled to answer the other. The Trump administration now faced the challenge of supporting Israel without being drawn into a ground war. The Israel-Iran exchange justified the U.S. military buildup but also complicated its goals. The region's volatility was now undeniable. In the aftermath, President Trump issued a global ultimatum to Iran on June 16, demanding unconditional surrender and the dismantling of its nuclear program. The message was clear: no negotiation, only capitulation, backed by a surge of offensive U.S. military assets. B-2 stealth bombers and bunker-buster munitions were deployed, signaling readiness for deep strikes. Officially, the U.S. claimed a defensive posture, but the distinction was increasingly blurred. Trump's ultimatum aimed to intimidate Iran into submission, but also risked backing Tehran into a corner. The stakes were now higher than ever, with little room for compromise. The world watched as the two nations edged closer to open conflict. The collision course seemed set. Tensions had been simmering for months, with President Trump issuing increasingly stern warnings regarding Iran's nuclear program. The international community watched with bated breath, unsure whether these were merely rhetorical threats or a prelude to something more. The world soon saw Trump's threats turn into action. The operation, codenamed Silent Hammer, was meticulously planned over several weeks. Between June 19 and 22, the U.S. launched precision airstrikes. These were not indiscriminate bombings, but carefully calculated attacks designed to minimize collateral damage. The primary targets were Iran's Fordow and Natanz nuclear sites. These facilities were at the heart of Iran's uranium enrichment efforts, and their neutralization was deemed critical to preventing the development of nuclear weapons. B-2 bombers, flying undetected, utilizing stealth technology to evade Iranian radar systems, delivered bunker busters, specialized munitions designed to penetrate deep underground facilities. The goal was to cripple Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities, setting back their nuclear program by years. The operation targeted infrastructure, not widespread destruction, emphasizing a desire to avoid civilian casualties. The underlying objective was aiming to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions and prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons in the Middle East. Trump declared the strikes a spectacular success, addressing the nation from the White House. This was a calculated move, projecting strength to both domestic and international audiences, signaling resolve and deterring further escalation. The White House emphasized the limited scope of the operation, seeking to reassure allies and adversaries alike. The message was clear: no ground troops, only targeted airstrikes, a proportionate response to a specific threat. Officials stressed this was not the start of a broader war, but a carefully calibrated action. The justification was that it was a necessary step to prevent nuclear proliferation and maintain regional stability. The administration hoped careful messaging, coordinated across various channels, would control the narrative and Iran's response, preventing a spiral into a larger conflict. By defining the action as a counter-proliferation strike, a defensive measure against a potential threat, the US sought to avoid all-out war and de-escalate the situation. The world waited, holding its breath, for Iran's next move, unsure of what the future held. Despite the dramatic strikes, no American troops have entered Iran. The Trump administration has limited its actions to air and sea, avoiding a costly ground war. US strategy relies on technological superiority. Long-range bombers, cruise missiles, and advanced jets strike from a distance. 40,000 troops remain stationed in allied countries or at sea, ready to defend but not invade. This posture signals deterrence, not occupation. After years of difficult wars, there's little appetite for another ground conflict. The goal: dismantle Iran's nuclear program through limited force, not full-scale invasion. The US airstrikes sent shockwaves worldwide. European allies called for restraint and diplomacy, warning of catastrophic consequences. The UN echoed these calls while Russia and China condemned US actions and warned of nuclear risks. In the Middle East, Israel and Gulf states supported the tough stance, seeing Iran as a primary threat. At home, Trump's actions split his base. Some praised decisive leadership, others warned of another endless war. Congress voiced bipartisan concern over presidential war powers, demanding debate before further escalation. The world and the US remained deeply divided on the path forward. The stakes had never been higher. The risks of a wider conflict are not merely hypothetical. They are a tangible and growing threat that looms over the entire region and beyond. We must consider the potential ramifications of further escalation are immense. The consequences of miscalculation or deliberate aggression could quickly spiral out of control, leading to a devastating and protracted conflict. Iran could retaliate with missile strikes, not only on US bases in the region, but also on key strategic assets and allies, endangering thousands of troops, both American and those of allied nations stationed there. The safety and security of these personnel are directly at risk, and triggering a dangerous escalation. This could draw in other global powers, further complicating the situation and increasing the potential for widespread devastation. The global economy is at risk. The stability of international markets hangs in the balance, vulnerable to the slightest disruption. Any disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, a critical artery for global oil supplies, could send oil prices soaring, creating economic shockwaves that would be felt around the world. And spark a recession, plunging the world into a period of economic hardship and uncertainty. Iran's proxy forces, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to the Houthis in Yemen, could be activated and ignite a multi-front regional war, drawing in various factions and exacerbating existing tensions. Instability could spread rapidly, from the Mediterranean region already fraught with conflict to the Arabian Peninsula, destabilizing key nations and threatening regional security. This would inevitably lead to devastating humanitarian crises, with widespread suffering and displacement, and massive waves of refugees seeking safety and asylum, placing immense strain on neighboring countries and international aid organizations. The greatest danger of all lies in miscalculation, a failure to accurately assess the intentions and capabilities of the other side. A single, seemingly minor incident could quickly spiral into a full-scale war, with devastating and irreversible consequences. Trump bets on a strategy of intimidation, hoping to deter Iran through displays of military might. Iran, in turn, bets on defiance, refusing to back down in the face of external pressure. If either side misjudges the other's resolve or underestimates the potential for escalation, the consequences could be utterly catastrophic, leading to widespread destruction and loss of life. The world stands on a knife's edge, teetering precariously between peace and a devastating conflict. The next move, the next decision, could change everything, determining the fate of the region and potentially the world. To sum up, there's no US ground invasion of Iran, yet. Instead, the US has mobilized massive air and naval power, striking Iranian nuclear sites and pushing both nations to the brink. The strategy: maximum pressure, limited strikes, and a gamble that Iran will capitulate without a ground war. The risks remain profound. Retaliation could trigger uncontrollable conflict. For now, the world watches a dangerous standoff, hoping it doesn't spiral further. The mobilization is real, the threat is credible, and the stakes are global. The path to a wider war has never seemed shorter.